Rachel, thank you very, very much. It was beautiful, it was inspired, and I loved actually the fact that you didn't try to make it to sound like Mozart's middle movements. Beethoven is still in the very beginning of his career at this point. He just started working together with Haydn, started to try to impress Haydn. He even dedicated this sonata, as many other first sonatas, to Haydn. And just like Haydn, he would also write the middle movements of his sonatas in the beginning in the Largo, instead of, for example, copying Mozart, who was his idol, and doing it all andante. So after having heard so many of the andante renditions of this movement, I thank you very, very much for not trying to make it sound jumpy, dancey, or somehow more energetic than it should be. It is really a Largo movement, and I thank you very much for accepting the challenge of Beethoven of making this really not to be too fast forward. Having said that, this movement could have profited even more from not the Mozart-like, but the classical-like pulsation inside of it. You are obviously playing it as some kind of improvisation, and sometimes the bars, when we compare them to each other, they just don't match the length. Some bars, some quarter notes, they are longer, some of them are not that long anymore, and it sounds a little bit disbalanced. What I would love you to try to do is to aim to get every of the qualities that you so marvelously performed right now, but still in a little bit more structure movement. It doesn't have to be andante, as I told you, but I just remember hearing this sonata, practicing this sonata myself, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something that I already have played once. Being in the age of 18, 19, I was very keen on playing Haydn's sonata in C major. Have you played it?
Yes.
So the second movement of that, do you remember it? You can also ruin it by making it so disbalanced and then entering when you please, finishing when you want to. Just like tear in your eyes, and then suddenly it will be so easy then to get this sonata, the second movement, to sound like some fantasia which disconnects with the audience after several first seconds, because the audience cannot get it to the shape. So what I want to advise is to take the inspiration maybe even from the second movement, especially if you played it. It's the same year, 1795. I was astounded by this. 1795, exactly same year when Haydn created this movement and when Beethoven created the same kind of rendition in the same key, F major, dedicated to Haydn. You don't have to go too far to understand why. Beethoven was actually, he didn't consider himself to be so much of the student of Haydn, and he found Haydn in the first place as a witness to Mozart's geniosity. He wanted to study with Haydn to get to be a new Mozart, you know, and although we can really grasp that he learned from Haydn enormous amount, although he himself would always say, no, I didn't learn anything from Haydn. But we know Beethoven's character. I mean, I share the same kind of hair with him, so I do understand his character a little bit, but he was not a very good student in that kind of sense that he never said really many thanks to Haydn, but he wrote his first sonatas to Haydn, and maybe he wanted to really impress him despite everything what he told. So let us try once again from the very, very beginning. Feel a little bit like a pulsation. When I want my students to feel more of a pulsation, I play on a second piano some kind of the made-up orchestra accompanimento, which we obviously cannot play over the internet. But maybe you can think about some kind of inside of your brain. Choose your tempo that you want to start with and try to keep with it and see whether it still matches your needs. Doesn't it engage you too much?
No, I think it's good because it starts feeling a little bit too improvisatory and kind of maybe too rhetorical, not like structural enough.
Exactly. I think especially noteworthy would be those endings of the melodies that you have here or you have here. By the way, do you know the term how they are called?
Appoggiaturas?
Yes, exactly. Those endings, what you have there, what I showed, and that you would have also here in the end. How do they call this? You know, the term derives from 60 years later than Beethoven actually wrote this sonata, but they call these cadences that finish on the how do you call the strong and the weak? Yeah, on the weak side of the bar, they call it the feminine cadenza. Can you believe it?
Okay.
Yeah. So please try to keep those feminine cadences inside of the pulsation, because now you also made every time some little ritardando there. And then you would do. I would avoid that, because from the standpoint of sound, you can make all the rubato that you want to do with more diminuendo. Just replace the rubato whatsoever with the limits of the dynamic. You will sound wonderfully. What you are doing today with this Yamaha is outstanding. Trust yourself. Once again. Brava. How do you feel now?
Yeah, I like that. I'll work on it so it's even more controlled, but I think time isn't really necessary in this opening, at least.
I think so too. So now look at the length of the slur here, at the length of the slur here, and at the length of the slur here. Those three slurs, by the way, tend to be shaped like smaller slurs. For example, I hear quite clearly, and then it sounds wada, wada. What you want to do here is to make the diminuendo to go downwards so slightly that the bass entering at the F doesn't ruin the shape of the melody. Was it audible from where you are?
Yeah.
So try it once again. If you would enter back again from the C, D, no worries. A little bit too much now. Continue. Brava. You see, this effect that he uses here is so wonderful. In the very beginning, he never gave the left hand that accompanimento. It didn't sound like this, and then suddenly it's just like a completely new world entering on the dominant. I think I can only think of another time where I have heard this effect is when the piano enters the second movement of Tchaikovsky's first piano concerto, where you have the flute solo, and then suddenly barely 8 bars later, the whole orchestra is there at your feet. So I love what you do here with the left hand and how much you are singing here. It's beautiful. How about entering once again from this place and again keeping this a little bit more inside of, let's say, a piano concerto type, where somebody would be inside of this mood. Can we? Thank you so much. Now we have the finished period here, and we don't have to speak about any of those pulsations anymore. It sounds so naturally. It really does. What you don't want to have is to make a big splash crescendo on this second note. We still have to think about why would he put a slur here if we wanted us to treat both of these notes a little bit like the energy giving ta-ta-tam. The slur of 2 would always mean, especially in those times, that the second one is lighter. How much light, you decide with your Bauchgefühl, as we say here, with your guts. So the very same thing what I wanted to just say was also in the endings of your melodies here. Sometimes you tend to romanticize them too much. Be sure that at least in the very end you don't make any crescendo. Now, I'm pretty sure it was the computer or the phone or the internet and nothing else, but be careful about making an accent on this B, as well as on this F, as well as on this B, because when the piano reduces its sound on a long note, the next note after that tends to beat. This is what happened now on this B, but it didn't happen here. So this is why I think partially I can blame you for that. Partially, but only partially. So let us go now to the D minor, please. There are only several things where I wanted you to see. First of all, bravo for these wonderful slurs. They really sounded like you are taking a sigh, you know, like grasping for air. That was very good. The last one was too much on the crescendo for my sense of the style. I think what you were trying to do is to get this crescendo to prepare for the sforzando. But this crescendo will not implement the second, the fourth, and a sixth note of the bar because they are tied under the slur. You can do the crescendo making this note, then this note, and then this note to be louder. So this is then the key point where you wanted to arrive. Okay? Having said that, having heard these beautiful slurs, what you placed here, I am now tending to really wish for them here and here, where I sadly didn't hear them. It would be way more beautiful if you took advantage of these slurs, because you see, I don't think that Beethoven really wrote the sonata just like he wanted to make it. It's something that we see from Haydn. And, you know, this sonata maybe was just set to please him, because the later second movements, they all differ from this quite outstandingly. Maybe it's just, you know, some kind of the sign, Mr. Haydn, I am your student. Please look at sonata written by me, written by you. We can read it like this. Would you start once again from the D minor, just because of those little slurs? How do you feel?
Yeah, I'll definitely do those.
Thank you. It sounded now so fresh, because I really can, if you would be in Lithuania right now, where students have at their exam, guess who is the composer, what piece it is. When they are entering the academy or when they are exiting the school, they have like 20 different movements that they have to learn, that they have to listen to and recognize. And sometimes the teachers, they are throwing in some pieces that were not obviously given to them. So you have to sense what is the style, who could be the composer, and so on. We can now, at this particular point in the lesson, say, now I hear the mixture of the various features of Mozart, of Beethoven, of Haydn, but I cannot tell that it has something to do with some improvisation that could have been written by somebody else. It is now a mixture, and this mixture, it shows only good sides for me. I understand the structure quite clearly. I enjoy the sound, beautiful sound. I hear all the melodies and everything. What is the most important? It makes sense. This is why we call classical music, because it makes sense. It's structured. Okay? So, now please continue pleasuring me from here. Brava. The only little thing, you see, my work today, I asked you yesterday, do you really need a lesson with me? From what I see, you need a 20-minute lesson with me, but not really more. I am picking up the bits in your performance to try to make them even better, but you are such a high-level pianist. I hope that you recognize that. So, don't make any splashy crescendo here. You don't want to get the people to not be on your side, who would see something of Liszt or Chopin or something like this. When you, it's not yet the time. It's still 18th century. I would say, maybe relying more on this pulsation. Okay, but don't make the operatic crescendo here. It's just not yet the time for this. Would you start once again from the very same spot, or even from this F, E, D, E, whatever is comfortable for you? Bravo. Okay, you are now aiming to keep the pulsation. I can hear it quite clearly. You are less free in your timing than you were before, but it makes more sense for me. be sure every time when you play the long line with lots of long notes. Here, for example, to see what is happening after the long note. We just had one more example there earlier in the score where I could clearly hear an accent being played at the beginning. So here in this appoggiatura, you also want to avoid making too much sense of the first note. What I always use is a trick of faking a diminuendo, where you kind of think between the long note and the short note that follows it, I would specially aim for diminuendo. On every piano that I will then get to play it on, I will not face an accent, and this is the main reason. Because you see, if you play it correctly, nobody will give you flowers, nobody will tell you thank you very much. But if there is a snap, it just goes like this, just like, you know, starting the Netflix, and the first thing what you hear is and if your computer is not ready with its sound, then you get to do like this. So it's the exactly same thing what happens with us all the time when I hear. Why we do this? Because obviously our hand wants to accommodate itself with a new movement. So it's just something to think about. Obviously, you just have to have one try with that and then continue thinking about this when you perform, and it will never happen to you again. Okay? I had to learn it. Now I think I automatized this. But at the very beginning, it was very hard. Especially, for example, playing the chorales by Bach, or the pieces that sounded slightly like, what was it? You are doomed to make accents after so many long notes. Somewhere in the piece it will appear. So the only way to doing this in the right way is thinking the diminuendo for me. It proved to be the easiest. So where can we start again? Maybe from here, maybe. Brava. I'm again turning you off for just a small reason. First of all, please enjoy this break. And by enjoy the break, think about how insignificant this C is in comparison to the D. E, C, bottom, bottom. Instead of that, what I got right now to hear was as if you want to connect those both notes together. It's something that I would consider to be against the stylistical rule. So you don't want to get those people to hate you, who think that they know all the rules and they know that without those rules it's impossible to play. The very same thing happened here. What a beautiful sigh here. Can your left hand also to play this in the same manner to not prevent us to be a little bit surprised by the sforzando? Because what you played right now, it was beautiful, and then and now I will beat you. What I suggest is and then get the emphasis on here. If you have troubles practicing this just because of how long did you play this A already being the forceful note, try first of all playing a little break here. You will profit from it. First of all, just finish. And then make the sforzando that you need to do. The problem of yours, I don't see any problems in your playing, is just you think this note has to be continuous, I see it as the finish. Okay? Would you start once again from this bar, just the bar before, to see how it works? that sforzando to make is your decision to do. The sforzando is a sforzando, but you can make it aggressive. You can make it the smiley sforzando, just an attention grabber saying, ah, like you would expect Mozart to sigh after somebody have performed him something beautifully. Ah, it's so beautiful. It's also a sforzando. You don't have to make a splashy beat. This is what I heard right now. It was too aggressive for my sense. Having said that, when you are playing, you are structuring the piece not 2 bars after 2 bars. You look at the whole piece altogether. So if you have more of these sforzandi, which would not be as aggressive, but would have something of the aggression inside, in the sense of this aggression to only be positive. I don't think the aggression can be positive though.
Yeah, okay.
Know. You know what I mean with this?
Yeah.
Not the aggression, the emphasis, the very big sigh, the very big drama. If you have more places like these, so it makes sense on an altogether level, why not? Having said that, this is by far the loudest sforzando you have given me now, so it didn't make sense. Just for that one reason. Okay? So let us start from here once again. And continue. Bravo. With this all being said, I hope that you could profit a little bit from this structurizing and these slurs, you know, the explanation of why these slurs are so important for us. It's the sign of those times, sign of these gallant things. It's just a, I don't know, it's just something that we do without really asking. It is just there. It's how we enter the Queen's room and we say Your Majesty in the first place and Your Majesty in the very last. You know, it's some kind of a tradition that nobody really questions anymore. So this sigh that happens between the 2 notes of the slur, it's something that we find everywhere, but sometimes it speaks against our expectations. Every one of us was formed, shaped as a pupil in a romantical style. The hardest thing for us to learn is to learn to sing on the piano. Obviously, when you are singing, you are aiming to produce beautiful sound tied to long melodies. This is the first thing what is shocking to every one of us when we start practicing with, for example, urtext editions of Mozart, Beethoven, with people who specialize in this kind of music. This was shock for me many years ago when I came to Hanover and when I realized that all these beautiful traditions of performing Chopin or Rachmaninoff, for instance, my most favorite composer of all, it must feel a little bit like a trip in the time machine, where you realize that all these singing abilities of the piano have not been yet developed. And when people spoke a completely different musical language to get the people excited about their music. So some of the things that we would do in the Romantical era, for example, tie an outstanding amount of notes into one line, not looking at how many slurs they are, although I actually still do. I have learned so much from reading the slurs of Beethoven, Mozart, and Haydn. When I provided that to Chopin, actually it made so much sense too. So it's not something that would completely alter itself from the romantical style to nowadays style, or to the classical style whatsoever. It's just the reason behind the slur is to tell to the people that between the beginning and the end of that slur, we only have one particular center of attention, of drama, of emphasis. The tradition of putting the slurs beginning as that emphasis, it originates from the classical era. In the times of Chopin, we see many slurs where the emphasis is in the middle of the slur, but one thing doesn't change. We only have one emphasis inside of the slur, and new slur is again a new building with new set of people, with new set of dramas inside of them. So if you combine too many small slurs into one big slur, you can miss the original idea behind why did composer choose to put more ink and more movements into writing the score rather than just doing it like this. You see what I mean with this? And I hope that from today's lesson and from these little new things that you developed inside of the score, that you saw inside of the score, you could sense a little bit that you gained more differences from what we expect from the romantic composition. We live in those times right now where we perform 3 or 4 different styles in every of our concerts. The more significantly different those styles are, the more we profit, the more attention from the audience we are getting, the more the audience cherishes those moments where we switch from one style to the other style, and it sounds like either we change the piano or the pianist is not the same anymore. So with this, you really want to avoid to perform the very, very first sonatas by Beethoven in the same style that you would perform the last opuses by Brahms. And this is what it sounded in the beginning of the lesson, but I hope that you would only get the good sides of changing it slightly. Obviously, with your abilities and with your beautiful sound, all of the tasks I gave you today were overly easy, and you will adapt that if you want to adapt that in no time.
Thank you.